The first time an alien student asked why his hair was falling out, Marcus Bell was halfway through a boiled protein bar and a cup of something the cafeteria labeled coffee, but smelled like charred moss. "Why does your scalp molt?" asked Zarnell, who had only recently learned the difference between a question and an insult. Marcus glanced up, blinking once. The overhead lights buzzed softly, and Zarnell's 3 eyes gleamed with genuine academic curiosity. Marcus rubbed his head, the bare patch at the crown warm under his palm. He chuckled and said, "Stress. Or evolution." Zarnell tilted his head. "That is not a diagnosis." "No," Marcus said, pushing the protein bar away. "But it's the most honest answer you're getting before lunch." The cafeteria buzzed with chatter, some vocal, some telepathic, some harmonic vibrations that made the spoons hum on the trays. Marcus had been the first human exchange teacher accepted at the Interstellar Academic Convergence Station, a floating academy orbiting the neutral moon of Elter 6. Most of the students were in their second or third century of learning, which made Marcus feel like a particularly nervous high school intern pretending to be a professor. Zarnell was part of a group of 3 alien students assigned to Marcus's Earth Culture and History seminar. He was lanky, greenish, and always wore a translator collar that blinked when he was about to say something uncomfortable. "Does the hair loss indicate weakening of the species?" Zarnell continued, not blinking. Marcus stared at him. "No. It just means I've been grading too many essays on the Cold War." Zarnell nodded, then tapped something into his data pad with a long finger. "So stress is the leading cause of your epidermal shedding." Marcus grinned. "Among other things. Aging. Genetics. Bad shampoo." Zarnell looked genuinely distressed. "You trust your grooming fluids with unknown chemical compositions?" Another student, a gelatinous lavender being named Hula, jiggled sympathetically. "We use volcanic minerals to exfoliate. No chance of hair loss." Marcus leaned forward on his elbows. "Yeah, well, we don't have lava baths and bio-rejuvenating steam chambers on Earth. We have long work hours and taxes." Later that week, Marcus was called to present a lecture to the faculty board on human physiological adaptation. It should have been a routine session, but nothing was routine when the audience included a dozen species, each with their own understanding of biology. "I'll be focusing on stress responses in humans," Marcus said, clicking the display forward. "Particularly hair loss." That got their attention. A stubby professor with a translucent skull raised a limb. "Why would a being shed protective scalp fibers when under attack?" "It's not an attack," Marcus said. "It's internal, psychological, emotional." A ripple of unease passed through the room. He continued, trying not to sweat under the panel lights. "See, humans developed in high-stress environments. Predators, weather extremes, other humans. Our bodies evolved to react quickly, fight or flight. But in modern society, the threats are different. Deadlines, rent, looming existential dread." Hula raised a flipper. "And this causes follicle failure?" "Not directly," Marcus said. "But the body reallocates resources under stress. Hair production isn't prioritized." A long silence followed. Then Professor Korn, who had 6 doctorates in comparative evolution, said, "Your species sacrifices vanity for survival." "Exactly," Marcus replied, then paused, though not voluntarily. Later, in the staff lounge, Marcus collapsed onto a couch near a low-oxygen plant and rubbed his temples. His hair felt thinner already. "You did well," said Professor Seln, a bird-like being with feathers that shimmered according to mood. Hers were a calm gray-blue. "You made vulnerability a strength." Marcus shrugged. "I made balding sound noble. That's a first." A week after the lecture, Marcus noticed Zarnell watching him more intently than usual during class. The student's data pad was propped up, recording Marcus's every move. When Marcus raised an eyebrow, Zarnell said, "I am observing the progression." "The progression of what?" "Your follicular retreat." Marcus sighed. "It's not a migration. It's just going away." Zarnell blinked. "That is tragic." Welcome to mid-30s. As the semester progressed, Marcus began to notice something else. His hair loss was accelerating. He hadn't changed his diet, his sleep hadn't been great, but that was nothing new. What was new was the way students kept offering him remedies. "Try this," said Hula one afternoon, handing him a vial of something that looked like crushed moonberries. "It's from my homeworld. Stimulates dermal expansion." "I'm not rubbing alien goo on my head," Marcus said. "Why not?" Hula jiggled. "Your current state is clearly unsatisfactory," Zarnell added. "You no longer resemble your identification photo." That's from 2 years ago. Exactly. Marcus leaned back, rubbing his temples. Look, guys, I appreciate the concern. But it's normal. Humans lose hair. Some earlier than others. Have you considered gene therapy? Asked a student from the Glaxer quadrant. My uncle reversed his cranial shrinkage with retroactive DNA balancing. I'm not modifying my genes just to keep my hair. Why not? Marcus stared at him. Because I'm not trying to win a beauty pageant. I'm just trying to get through the week. 2 days later, Marcus collapsed in the corridor outside his quarters. He'd been feeling lightheaded for hours, but he'd chalked it up to dehydration and poor sleep. When he came to, he was in the medical bay with a dull ache behind his eyes and a strange humming in his ears. Dr. Finla, the station's physician, hovered over him, scanning his vitals. You've got elevated cortisol, blood sugar irregularities, and your neural rhythms are out of sync. Stress. Marcus croaked. Severe. Possibly burnout. Also, you have anemia. Great. So it's not just my hair. No. It's your entire system. You need rest, iron supplements, and a change in workload. Marcus blinked at the ceiling. Is quitting an option? Not unless you want to be replaced by a hologram. He spent the next 2 weeks on medical leave, during which his students sent him a barrage of digital notes, each less helpful than the last. Zarnal, I researched cranial grafts. Many options. Hula, I made you a hat. Glaxer student, hair is overrated. Try scales. When Marcus returned to class, he wore the hat. It was stitched from recycled insulation material and looked like a cross between a beanie and a tactical helmet. The students applauded. Zarnal stood at the front of the room. You have embraced the transition. Marcus laughed. Yeah, turns out evolution's cheaper than shampoo. He resumed the lecture, but halfway through, a tremor rocked the station. The lights flickered. Alarms wailed. A voice over the comms said, all personnel to emergency stations. Hull breach in Sector 4. Marcus grabbed his coat and turned to the students. Go. Emergency drills. You know the path. Zarnal hesitated. Will your condition hinder mobility? I'm not crippled, just balding. Move. They scattered, and Marcus joined the security team in checking the evac routes. A cargo vessel had misaligned during docking, tearing a small hole in the outer ring. No casualties, but the pressure seals had failed in several corridors. Marcus was helping secure an oxygen line when a metal beam came loose and collapsed onto his shoulder, pinning him against the wall. Pain shot through his chest, and the last thing he saw before blacking out was Zarnal's wide eyes. When he woke, he was back in the medical bay, ribs bound, left arm in a sling, face pale. Dr. Finla looked grim. You've got 2 cracked ribs, a bruised lung, and a dislocated shoulder. Could be worse, Marcus rasped. You're not invincible, she said. Never claimed to be. You need 6 weeks minimum before teaching again. 6 weeks. Marcus groaned. You want to breathe properly again, don't argue. Recovery was slow. The painkillers helped, but sleep was fragmented. He'd lie in bed, one arm immobile, listening to the low hum of the station and wondering how many more years he could do this. Zarnal visited often. Does the injury correlate with increased follicular loss? He asked once. Marcus chuckled, then winced. No, Zarnal. This one's just physics. But you're recovering. Slowly. That's the human way. Zarnal studied him. You adapt. Even broken. Marcus nodded. Yeah, we're stubborn like that. At the end of the semester, Marcus returned to the classroom. He'd lost more hair, gained a few new scars, and developed a deep aversion to falling metal beams. Zarnal asked one final time, so which is it, stress or evolution? Marcus grinned and pointed to his head. At this point, probably both. And for the first time, Zarnal laughed. Marcus stared at the stack of unopened messages on his desk. The station's learning interface had helpfully sorted them by urgency, critical, important, mildly concerning, and sent by Zarnal. The last category alone had over 70 entries. He rubbed his eyes with the heel of his hand, winced at the ache in his ribs, and leaned back. The chair groaned beneath him like it, too, had given up. Still alive, he muttered. The door chimed. Not the hesitant trill of a student, but the rapid triple pulse of someone with clearance and no patience. He groaned and sat up. Yeah. Dr. Finla stepped in without waiting. She was holding a med tablet and a small packet labeled with severe warnings in 4 languages. Her feathers were puffed slightly, a sign of annoyance, though she kept her tone flat. You skipped your follow-up scan. I didn't skip it, Marcus said. I just didn't go. That's what skipping means. Semantics. She dropped the packet on his desk. Your iron levels are still low. You're not absorbing nutrients properly. You're overexerting yourself and underreporting symptoms. He gestured to his half-eaten nutrient square. I'm eating. Your body isn't processing it efficiently. Scar tissue, inflammation, disrupted circadian rhythm. All real things, Marcus. I'm not dying. Not yet. But you're dragging your recovery like it owes you rent. He sighed and rubbed at the bridge of his nose. Can't you just give me a booster or something? I'm not plugging a stim shot into someone who spent 3 days last week running around the engineering ring with a compression vest and one working lung. I wasn't running. You were speed limping while leading a fire drill. That was important. She leaned in, lowering her voice. You are not a structural support beam. You can't keep throwing yourself at emergencies like you're made of alloy. He looked out the viewport, watching a maintenance pod glide past in slow orbit. I don't know how to do nothing. Then learn. Or next time, you'll be recovering under full sedation. He picked up the packet and studied the fine print. Tastes like dirt? Worse. He nodded and tucked it into his drawer. Fine. She turned to leave, then paused. Zarnal has submitted a proposal. Something about a cultural immersion project? Marcus groaned. Let me guess. He wants to shadow me for a week. Longer. He wants to live with you. He looked up sharply. Absolutely not. Then tell him yourself. Apparently, it's a scientific imperative. After she left, Marcus stared at the wall for a long minute. Then he opened the message queue. The proposal was detailed. Too detailed. Zarnal had outlined a 24-day observational schedule, including meal times, rest periods, and emotional fluctuations under domestic stimulus. There were diagrams. He hit reply and typed. No, he hit send. The next morning, Zarnal was waiting outside his door at 6. You declined, Zarnal said, holding a duffel bag the size of a small coffin. That's right. Zarnal blinked slowly. I have already moved out of my dormitory pod to avoid confirmation bias. You can't just. I require first-hand data on human recovery patterns, particularly yours, due to your anomalous resilience. Marcus rubbed his temple. You're not staying here. I brought my own bedding. That's not the issue. Zarnal held up a small orb. This is my personal sanitation unit. I will not contaminate your environment. I don't care about contamination. Then what is the barrier? Marcus opened his mouth, closed it, and sighed. Fine. 48 hours. You get 2 days. You make a mess, you're out. Zarnal entered without hesitation, scanning the interior of the quarters like a forensic analyst. By midday, Marcus regretted everything. Zarnal cataloged each of his actions. He asked why Marcus used 2 different spoons across meals. He questioned his preference for sleeping on his side. He took photos of Marcus's discarded socks and labeled them by degree of odor. You understand this is invasive, right? Marcus said, sipping something lukewarm that might have been tea. I am conducting a non-interventionist ethnographic study. You're staring at me while I brush my teeth. That action is core to your oral maintenance ritual. It fascinates me. Marcus set down the mug. I should have agreed to the sedation. That evening, while Marcus tried to read, Zarnal sat cross-legged on the floor, humming in low frequencies and occasionally jotting notes. You are not at rest, Zarnal said without looking up. I'm sitting. That's resting. Your heart rate suggests agitation. It's called trying to relax while being observed like a zoo animal. Do you often experience elevated discomfort in solitude? Marcus glanced up. This isn't solitude. You're literally 3 feet away. Zarnal tapped his pad. Noted. Proximity alters human perception of aloneness. Marcus tossed the book onto the table. Why are you doing this? Zarnal looked up. Because you continue functioning despite systemic inefficiencies. You disregard pain thresholds. You prioritize others over personal health. I must understand how you persist. Marcus leaned back, arms folded. You think I'm some kind of anomaly? You are statistically improbable. He laughed once, dryly. That's one way to put it. Zarnal studied him for a moment longer. My people do not recover from trauma by continuing. We pause. Retreat. You expand effort. We don't all do that. But you do. Marcus was quiet for a long time. Then he said, I don't know how to stop without feeling like I'm wasting time. Zarnal made a low, whirring sound. Efficiency is not always measured in output. Tell that to every deadline I've ever missed. At some point during the night, Marcus woke coughing. His ribs flared with pain, and his throat felt raw. He stumbled into the kitchenette, blinking against the dim lights. Zarnal was already there, holding a steaming cup. Your breathing has become uneven. Marcus took the cup without question and sipped. Bitter. Herbal. Effective. What is this? Boiled root extract from my planet. Antiseptic and bronchodilatory. It is safe for humans under 70 kilograms. Marcus raised an eyebrow. I'm 72. Then expect vivid dreams. He drank anyway. By morning, the pain was dulled, and his chest felt lighter. He didn't say thank you, but Zarnal didn't seem to need it. Later that day, Marcus taught from a stool instead of pacing. His voice was hoarse, but steady. The students were unusually attentive. Word had spread about the injury, the recovery, the human who refused to stay down. After class, Hula approached with a small container. It's not a remedy, she said. Just dessert. From home. No hair benefits. Marcus opened it. A gelatinous cube shimmered inside. Thanks. You're a strange creature, she said. I get that a lot. She left, and Zarnal appeared beside him. I have concluded the immersion. Already. You are not anomalous because you resist breaking. You are anomalous because you expect to. Marcus blinked. That's not flattering. It is not meant to be. He handed Marcus a small data chip. My findings. You may review them before I publish. Marcus turned it over in his hand. Did you at least learn something useful? Yes. You are inefficient, stubborn, chemically imbalanced, thanks, and capable of enduring conditions that should render you non-functional. That last part sounds slightly better. It is inexplicable, but I will continue investigating. Marcus slid the chip into his coat pocket. You want to write a paper on me, fine. Just do me a favor. What is it? Next time you want to study a human, pick one with better knees. Zarnal considered this. No, Marcus walked off toward the exit, wincing slightly with every step. Behind him, Zarnal tapped something into his pad and followed. Marcus adjusted the elastic brace around his shoulder for the third time and cursed softly as the Velcro snagged on the inside of his uniform sleeve. The lecture room was unusually warm, probably because the station's environmental processors were recalibrating for the seasonal cycle of 3 visiting species. One of them, unfortunately, required humidity levels Marcus associated with Florida in July. The students filed in at irregular intervals. Hula slithered across the floor with a thermal wrap around her midsection. A pair of insectoid twins from the Merrick cluster settled near the back, whisper clicking to each other while grooming their antennae with surgical care. Zarnal entered last, carrying a shallow tray that gently steamed. Please don't be food, Marcus muttered. It is not food, Zarnal said, setting the tray on the edge of Marcus's desk. It is a symbolic offering. Is this related to the time I nearly choked on your anti-inflammatory root tea? No. This is to mark the end of my observational cycle. Ceremonial closure is required. Marcus peered into the tray. A single smooth stone sat at the center, surrounded by a ring of bright, almost glowing leaves. The stone had a faint spiral engraved into it. Looks like a garden center's idea of a meditation gift basket. It represents your continued existence, Zarnal said, despite structural compromise. Well, that's flattering. Would you prefer a vial of your own sweat? That was the original tradition. Nope. Rock's perfect. He nudged the tray aside and cleared his throat. All right, everyone. Today we're concluding our unit on Earth-based psychological resilient structures. That includes everything from religion to coping rituals to the invention of sarcasm. The Merrick twins raised a pair of limbs simultaneously. Yes, you in the back. Is sarcasm a weaponized dialect? In a way, Marcus said. It's designed to confuse, disarm, or express frustration without direct confrontation. So, passive aggression. Exactly. It's one of our most versatile exports. Hula jiggled faintly. What is the evolutionary benefit of indirect hostility? It allows us to insult people while maintaining plausible deniability. Your species is baffling. You're not wrong. As the lecture continued, Marcus noticed a faint throb building behind his left eye. He pressed his fingers to his temple discreetly, hoping it would fade. It didn't. Instead, it developed into a steady pressure that made focusing a chore. By the time they reached the final slide, his vision had started to blur at the edges. All right, that wraps it up. No assignments over the rest cycle, unless you count trying not to cause an interstellar incident as homework. The students filtered out, leaving behind the usual collection of wrappers, data tabs, and a single unclaimed scale. Marcus remained seated longer than usual, elbows propped on the desk, eyes closed. You are overheating, Zarnel said from his right. I'm fine. You are perspiring through your synthetic fibers. Marcus opened his eyes. You mean my shirt? Yes. It is saturated. I'm just tired. Your speech was slurred during the final 10 minutes. Marcus stood, slowly. The room tilted. He grabbed the edge of the desk and took a deep breath. Okay, maybe not just tired. There is a diagnostic scanner in the med wing. Immediate examination is advised. I don't need a scan. I didn't eat breakfast, that's all. You are pale, your pulse is irregular, and your ocular vessels are dilated. You're not a doctor. Zarnel tilted his head. I am not. But I have memorized the triage protocols for humanoid species. You are exhibiting a cluster of warning indicators. Marcus sighed. Fine, but you're not coming with me. I will follow at a respectful distance. He made it 3 corridors before he had to stop. The pain behind his eye had sharpened, and his vision was pulsing in time with his heartbeat. He leaned against the wall and tried to breathe through the nausea. Zarnel stopped several feet back. Should I summon emergency personnel? Marcus waved weakly. No. Just give me a second. You are sweating again. That's what humans do before passing out. Then you are about to pass out. He didn't answer. The world narrowed to a tunnel, and the floor abruptly rose to meet him. When he came to, the overhead lights were unfamiliar and too bright. A rhythmic beeping accompanied the soft hiss of oxygen being cycled nearby. Dr. Finlay's silhouette hovered into view, her feathers flattened in a way Marcus had learned to associate with frustration that had passed through concern and emerged on the other side. Welcome back, she said. You collapsed from a cluster migraine paired with dehydration and mild anemia. Again, I thought those were under control. Apparently not. Your body disagrees. How long was I out? For hours. He tried to sit up but winced. Feels like someone hammered a tuning fork into my skull. You're lucky it wasn't a seizure. Your neural activity was spiking erratically. I didn't feel that bad. That's part of the problem. You normalize symptoms that should send most species into full shutdown. Is that a compliment? No. It's a diagnosis. She adjusted a small 4-line attached to his arm. You need to stop treating illness like an inconvenience. It is inconvenient. So is organ failure. He rested his head back against the pillow, the room spinning slightly. I wasn't even doing anything strenuous. You were doing everything else. Teaching, mentoring, ignoring treatment protocols. She tapped the screen beside him. Your body is not malfunctioning. It's exhausted. You've been running on stress hormones and caffeine for weeks. That's not resilience, it's deferred collapse. He closed his eyes. I'll rest. Not good enough. I'm putting you on a restorative schedule. Monitored sleep cycles. Nutritional oversight. No caffeine. No lectures. I can't just stop working. You'll stop, or I'll have you sedated and confined to quarters. That seems extreme. You nearly fainted into a waste chute last month. That was one time. And now this. You're not being punished. You're being preserved. Later, after the 4 was removed and the lights dimmed, Zarnel entered, holding a small thermal container. I brought you temperature-stabilized hydration. Thanks, Marcus said, taking it carefully. That root stuff again? No, just water. He drank slowly, the coolness easing the throb behind his eyes. You do not respond to stress like other species, Zarnel said. No kidding. Why do you continue to push until failure? Marcus thought for a moment. Because if I stop before I break, I feel like I've wasted potential. Like I could have done more. Even when it endangers your health. Maybe especially then. Zarnel sat beside the bed. You confuse endurance with value. Maybe. But it's how I was built. Zarnel was quiet for a long time. Then he stood. You are not a machine. Marcus closed his eyes again. Tell that to my schedule. The next 3 days passed under enforced rest. Finlay checked vitals twice daily. Meals were bland, but balanced. Zarnel visited once per cycle, always bringing water and never asking questions. By the end of the week, Marcus's headaches had subsided. His balance returned. The color in his face no longer matched the sheets. Finlay cleared him for light activity, but warned him about relapse behavior. He promised to comply. Mostly. Back in his quarters, he found the ceremonial tray still sitting on the shelf. The spiral-carved stone now had a note beneath it, written in careful block script. Survival is not the same as living. He picked it up, turned it over in his hand, and smiled. Then he put it back where it belonged.